Hello, my friends. I just wanted to drop some special bonus episodes into the feed that you probably have not heard unless you are a part or an early part of the Patreon for the Life Shift podcast. If you don't know, I do have a Patreon. It currently only has two tiers. One is a $3 a month tier just to support what I'm doing, helps cover production costs. And then there's a $5 tier, which will get you episodes early and just the, I guess, warm fuzzies for helping me out with the Life Shift podcast. But I used to have other tiers where people were so generous and were offering additional money each month to get bonus episodes and possible winnings of t-shirts and all sorts of things. And then I realized a couple months ago that I wasn't able to deliver what I wanted to, especially for those of you that were giving me the extra money. So right now we're just kind of doing the early episodes. You'll always get those. So if you want to support the Life Shift podcast, please jump over to patreon.com/the Life Shift podcast, and you can find that information there. But I come on here because I want to share a series of these bonus episodes that I did early on in the Patreon journey. There are like 20 plus episodes in which I had bonus recordings with previous guests. So I would go back and we would have a conversation about the experience of sharing their story on the Life Shift podcast, catch up on anything. And I think these are super important. And I know most of them did not see the light of day from outside of the Patreon. So I'm going to be dropping these episodes. Whatever you're listening to now is another episode. So I'm going to use the same intro for all of them. But here is one of the bonus episodes with a former guest from the Life Shift podcast. And if you like this, let me know, because I'm thinking of bringing some of this back and talking to previous guests as I go into year 4. So enjoy this bonus episode that was once released on the Patreon feed. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. I am here with my former guest, Heidi. Hey, Heidi.
Hey.
And you're also my former instructor.
Yes.
And it's your fault that the podcast exists.
It is my fault. Yay.
We were just reminiscing about the class, and we were talking a little bit about podcasting and how there are different rules for every podcast. And so, it's interesting to have a class. I'm so thankful, just before we get into your story, I'm so thankful that I opted to take the art of podcasting, because it was an elective and it scared me.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was like, and then when we got into it, I was like, well, why would I do this for like fake? Why wouldn't I do this for real? Do you know if there were any other people? How many students in your classes have like launched officially?
There've been a lot that said they were going to, and I always like comment on like their last discussion post, like, tell me where to find it when you do launch it. And you're the only person who actually has told me. So I don't know, maybe they have and they just like don't care if I know about it or not, and some people have come into the class who already have a podcast, but they kind of just like did it themselves and they want a little bit more like structure and they want to like figure it out a little bit more and have like more consistent branding. So they'll do that. But like, I'm pretty sure you're the biggest success story from the class.
I don't know about success, but I feel like this is the best journey that I've been on. And if I get nothing else from the degree program, I'm so happy that I stumbled into it, because I didn't know how much I needed this. It just felt like, I don't know, before you get into a space like this, and especially with the Life Shift, it's, obviously I'm dealing with very personal conversations with people, but you kind of look at podcasting from an outsider's perspective as like performative, like, oh, that person just wants to be heard.
Yeah.
But then when you're in it, it's a completely different vibe, and you kind of just like, it's something you just can't understand until you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that also means that you've understood it. I do still have like a lot of students who think that they can just get away with like sitting down with a friend and talking about nothing for 45 minutes. And no matter how much I'm like, listen, nobody wants to hear you talk about nothing unless you're a celebrity or an influencer. They just, they don't want
Exactly.
to hear it.
Yeah. I tell people that all the time that want to start podcasts. I'm like, the best thing I did was be forced to go through the process, to go through the pre-launch process. Even still, like considering target audience personas in my head, it's funny because I look at what I did in our class, and then I'll look at like the Apple statistics or like the analytics.
Yeah.
And that's my persona. Like,
I love it.
It's the person. And, and I think a lot of people don't go into any project with or a lot of people don't go into, it's too much work to do the prep. Let's just get started and then we'll figure it out as we go. But I think there was so much benefit in just kind of taking it piece by piece and then, launching it. So thank you for that experience. Thank you for not shutting down this idea and, encouraging me to do it, because it truly is one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever done. And so thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad.
And you were a part of it. So thank you for that as well. You were episode 19. And before we started recording, at this moment in time, I have 86 episodes recorded. So a lot has happened with the Life Shift podcast since we recorded your episode in June.
And that was just like a year ago.
June 2022. And then your episode came out in July of 2022. And so your episode was really about your journey to sobriety and kind of those last moments leading up to when you were just like, no more, I'm done. I know you've probably shared this story publicly with a lot of people. Was there any, through our conversation, was there any feelings that you had after you kind of let it out in this, here's my former students podcast that I'm about to put out there into the world?
So it's interesting because we recorded that at we recorded it right before I told my now ex-husband I wanted to get a divorce, and it released right after. And shortly after that, we both already had new partners. And I remember my new partner went and listened to our episode and was like, I feel really awkward about you thanking your husband and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but that was 10 years, that was 10 years ago. And you can still be grateful to somebody for what they meant in your life at that point. And, I'm still grateful to him for helping me find sobriety, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's working today. Right. So it was at a very pivotal time. And I think having the conversation made me also realize that I did that. Right? I can get through anything, divorce, job loss, you name whatever's happened since then. And if you can get through it without drinking, you can get through anything.
Yeah. And yours was so interesting to me because I think a lot of people have this long circuitous route to finding that last drink. And yours felt very, in your story, felt very abrupt. If that's a good word.
Yeah, they call it a high bottom.
I mean, good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think I get uncomfortable with things a lot sooner than other people. With my divorce, right? I was like, this needs to end. It's not working for me. And my now ex-husband was like, well, let's work it out. Let's figure, and I was like, no, you don't understand. If we try to keep at this, and it doesn't work out, I'm going to resent you even more. And we're going to be like those two parents. We had just gone to a friend's wedding where his parents wouldn't even speak to each other at the wedding. And so he couldn't even walk down the aisle with both of them like he kind of wanted to. And he couldn't even have them at the same table. And so I was like, I don't want to be those parents for our son. We have to end this now while things are still amicable. And we're at that place. So I do have a history of making big changes when I'm slightly uncomfortable as opposed to very uncomfortable.
There's something to be said for that because you just said that you just passed the 10-year mark, right?
Yeah. July 15th was 10 years sober for me. Yeah.
Congratulations. I remember, we released it. And this has been a very weird experience that I've had more than 10 times now in the episodes that I've released when I send someone like, hey, this is going to be when your episode is coming out, they're always like, well, not always, but in these instances, like yours was right around your 9th anniversary of that. Super random. The one that came out this week was the day after their birthday. All these events have like, I don't know, serendipity playing role in the release of these episodes. It's so weird, but congratulations on your 10 years of sober living.
Yes. Very exciting.
Did that milestone hit you in any different way? Because I sometimes think in society, we think 10, ooh, it's big.
It was like extremely uneventful. I was away for my sister's bachelorette party weekend, and the weekend was about her. So I didn't even remind anybody. I didn't even bring it up other than a text from like my best friend since 4th grade who congratulated me on it. I didn't put it out there. I didn't talk about it. So nobody even really, it kind of went, the day went on quietly, and it was kind of nice to like reflect back on that and realize that like, this is where I am now. I'm just a person who doesn't drink. Like, this isn't even a big deal, It's
not something that we need to like put another line in the sand so that everyone can see it. See, I made it another one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like years 1 and 2, those were the big deals, right? Like,
but even still, someone like you that you said, you had this high bottom of, you were done, and sure, you liked it, but you still knew that it wasn't serving your life in the way that maybe you wanted it to.
Yeah, for sure.
So for sure. I think that's important. With these particular bonus episodes, I have like a grouping of questions. And the next one, I don't think you're going to have an answer to, but I was going to ask, are there any updates about your life since we recorded? And you've already mentioned a few.
Yeah. So, other life shifts, right? Just since the episode released. Divorce. I moved out of my house, and I actually just recently purchased a house on my own. Thank you. And the day that I got my keys, I found out I was being laid off from my tech job.
I don't mean to laugh. This is terrible of me.
No, it's good, because if you can't laugh about it, then but seriously. And so I had planned a trip to go visit my partner who lives in Australia. That's the other thing, is I ended up with someone who lives in not just
literally
another
the
country,
farthest place you
but
could
like
go.
the furthest place on the planet that you could possibly live, from Ohio. And so like I went to meet him and his kids in February, and that was great and wonderful. And I was planning to go back this summer with my kid, and so that everybody could meet. And then I had to cancel the trip because I got laid off and I needed the money, obviously. So, but then he had a lot of personal stuff going on, like anything you can imagine as well. So it's just been, one thing after another. And then I get laid off from my job, and a week later, my son gives me strep throat, and on the way home from urgent care, my check engine light is coming on. So it's just, it's just the piling of stuff right now. That's a bit intense, but it's not my first time being laid off, so it'll be fine.
I mean, I think so as well. And like you said, that if you can get through this and you can get through all these events without drinking and without kind of resorting back to a long time ago version of you,
yes,
you'll be okay. Yeah. And I always see like your posts on LinkedIn, and you're very positive in that sense. Is that something that you've always kind of been more on the lighter, more positive, look at the bright side kind of feeling? Or is that more of a LinkedIn thing?
It's definitely not a LinkedIn thing. I think it's more of like a me getting older thing, because, I was just talking with my life coach yesterday, and she was like, I'm really proud of you. Like, you're doing really well. You're really optimistic and happy. And I was joking with my partner. I'm like, I don't know if maybe I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown, or I'm just old enough where I'm just largely unfazed by these things at this point, because it's just life. Right. And, when I first was laid off at the beginning of COVID, it was devastating. And it was, the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But my podcast came out of that. and would never have happened if I didn't get laid off. So, I'm able to now see in hindsight that like being laid off doesn't necessarily mean that, you're going to have to live in a van down by the river. It can mean,
which could be cool.
Which, yeah, I mean, if that's your thing, if you're into the tiny houses, go for it. But, like it's, it can be a good thing. It can be like, for me, it's a forced period of rest because I was on the verge of burnout anyway. So I'm being forced to like take a step back and reflect and relax and things like that. But I will say there was like a period of 2 days there where I was like super, super depressed and was like really, of course, right? Like where I was like, how am I going to pay for this new house? Like I couldn't even stand to be in it. Like I kept going back to my old apartment and I wouldn't even set foot in the new house because I was just so angry and upset. And there was like a couple of flashes where I was like, how do I get rid of this feeling of desperation right now? And I was like, well, I could drink. That would definitely get rid of it. So that never goes away, right? Like it's fleeting because then like, I laugh at it and I'm like, really? That's that's the answer?
That's your solution?
No, but it's like that. It's still that fleeting moment where it pops into your head and you go, well, I could drink,
Well, unfortunately, that's society's answer to a lot of problems.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, it is what it is. I have a Patreon supporter and a really great friend who has been dying for me to follow up with you and see what's happening in your life because their family members, or they had a family member that had an addiction to alcohol, and they kind of grew up around that. And I think maybe your story and understanding that you were a mother and you were so proud of the fact that, he's never seen you in that way, and that was something that you celebrated in your own kind of journey, is that you felt proud, right? That your son hadn't seen you in the ways that maybe, I think you said maybe you're a nephew or a niece or someone had seen.
Yeah, my nieces. Yeah, for sure.
And so they were like, oh, you have to follow up and see where she is. I want to see where this touch point is. And that's what I love about this additional kind of component of the life shift, is it like gives me an excuse to come back and drop into someone's life and see what's happening. And I knew when the episode came out that your life was already kind of changing, in that sense, but I didn't know when we recorded. And that is what I've learned throughout a lot of these conversations. And I think I knew this. Well, I definitely knew this, that people don't just have one life shift.
Of course.
Life is about pivots and whatnot. And, as much as I do try to focus on, okay, what was like the most significant pivot? You've had multiple since. You're a different person than you were even a year ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's the nice part about storytelling. Did you, besides your new partner giving you the feedback of being uncomfortable listening to your story, did you hear from anyone or any kind of feedback after your episode came out?
I think the general consensus, I don't think anyone personally close to me listened to it.
I'm upset.
That I know of. Or they didn't tell me if they did, right? Maybe they did. Because I think I shared it on Instagram. So maybe they did. But I got a lot of of the "you're so brave for sharing your story" on the internet for God and everyone, basically, right? And I always think that sometimes I feel as though it's a backwards compliment in a way, that like I'm doing it to seem brave when really that's not the case. Like it's just, I had a super proud mom moment the other day. I was driving in the car with my kiddo and I forget what we were talking about. And he was like, I just want to help people, Mom. That's all I want to do. I just want to help people. And like, it resonated with me so much. Like I was like, he didn't see me. I'm like crying while I'm driving. Right. And I'm like, me too, buddy. Me too. And like, that's really just it, is like, I found that the best way to help people is to share your story and to be genuine and to be authentic and to not pretend that like our lives are these perfect things. And, you know, so like when people say, oh, that's so brave of you, it's just kind of like, I'm kind of like, I guess, but it's also like my coping mechanism
Me too.
when I am feeling imposter syndrome or stressed or overwhelmed. Like helping other people helps me to feel better, you know?
But I think in a way, yeah, I mean, it helps you essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that when we were in a similar generation, I think that we grew up conditioned that we don't share those parts.
Yeah.
We don't share the mistakes. We don't share, you know, when things go wrong or a character flaw that someone might perceive as a flaw. It was just your experience. And,
Yeah.
you know, luckily you got out of an experience that maybe could have gone really badly.
Yeah.
You know, so I agree with that. I think there is so much power in telling your story. And I mean, it is, I guess I agree with you. It is brave, but only because we were conditioned a certain way growing up.
For sure. Yeah. I think if you asked like the younger generation, like if they think it's brave for people to share their story on the internet, they'd be like, no, are you kidding me? I just shared my whole life on TikTok last week, you know?
Exactly. And it's, you know, it's, we're doing this now, or I'm doing this show now in hopes that one person out there hears an episode and is like, I thought I was the only person and I'm not. Or it's possible, or someone's on the other side waving and being like, look, it's fine over here. You can do the thing. Or, you know, you will survive this moment. It feels really dark and really scary and whatnot at this point, but we can get there. You know, like I think of myself in this instance of like when I was 8 and no one around me knew how to help a kid who just lost his mom and didn't want to talk about it. I felt like I was the only one. And I took on the responsibility of proving that I was going to be okay to everyone around me. So then became the performative pretending that everything was fine. And so I think, you know, I'm kind of doing all these conversations and having these conversations out there for that little 8-year-old of me that was like, felt very alone. And so in your story, someone, you know, that might be like, do I really need to drink? Do I really need this in my life? And they hear like, yeah, you were able to do it in a quick shot. Because a lot of people might be afraid, like, am I going to go through withdrawals? Am I going to do this, that, or the other? And then they hear your story and they're like, oh, well, maybe it is possible.
Or they're like, oh, my drinking's not that bad. Like, do I really need to quit? And it's like, but what do you have to lose? You know, other than like the societal, you know, pressures and
just so
you know,
crazy
junk that comes along with drinking.
When you listen to podcast, I know you have a podcast that's all about learning and development, and you talk to other experts, and you have your solo episodes, which I assume you record the night before when you feel like you had to release an episode. What other kind of podcasts do you listen to?
I don't do. So
you don't listen to podcasts?
I don't listen. No, I really don't, because I have so many student podcasts to listen to throughout my semester that I'm usually just listening to those projects. And it's also been like COVID was the podcast killer for me because my commutes were where I listened to podcasts mostly. So now it'll be like, I'll catch a quick like 2X while I'm like cleaning or something. But typically it's mostly just like people I know who have podcasts, like yours or my friend Clea just started a podcast. And so I'm just like listening to like random episodes to try and be a good friend.
Help us with those numbers. Yeah. You know, I understand that. There's so many. I feel like now the more that I get in this space, the more people I meet, you know, because with another friend, we created this little like virtual community. We have little mixers every 2 weeks and we all get on Zoom and talk about our experiences and give each other, you know, ideas and whatnot as it relates. And so then my queue gets really large and then I feel like I'm behind and then I feel really pressured to listen. So maybe you're onto something.
Yeah, I just leave like the like new episode dot on the Google Podcast. It's just on all of the.
You're the only one that uses Google Podcast.
I know I am.
By the way. They don't even show it in search
Spotify.
anymore.
I don't. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I use something other than the regular ones, but I was wondering if like any kind of stories particularly do you gravitate to in maybe even in learning and development? Are there certain types of stories that you prefer to hear or that you connect with more? Or is it more like instructional, more foundational?
No, I think the stories, period, right? Like the how is this person doing this thing? Like I guess you in L&D you would call them like use cases, right? Maybe of like what is this person doing for their solution, or like what is I did catch like maybe 60 or 70% of the episode that you just dropped today, because I saw the clip on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, Jenny, we could talk. We could have some serious conversations about right where I was about this time last year.
Yeah. Well, I won't give you the end away, but it's a good ending. She has a good ending. So,
Yeah, so do
and
I. So do I.
and it's similar to yours.
Yeah.
Actually, it's her new part. She just moved to Scotland. So there's that. So
it's even more. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't get to that part. I know, like, I got to the part where she was like, could have been a road in Scotland. I was like, this must be foreshadowing, but I'm not sure what yet. But yeah, no, that's, yeah. I love the story. Like, I like you. Maybe not as
you like me?
much.
Thank you.
I like you.
Maybe not as much.
Maybe not as much as you are, but I, like you, am a story collector. And I love to just like, you know, and I gravitate towards those as people too. Like my partner, like, loves to collect people's stories. Like he can't get enough of like talking to people and random strangers and like reading like just stories about people's lives, you know, and like we're both, I think that's something that like connects us, is that we're both like big story collectors, you know?
Well, and I think that's, I feel like people in our generation that are kind of like opening their eyes in the last 5-10 years are like, oh, like we need to start sharing those. Like I said before, we need to start sharing the real parts of us and just being, I hate the word authentic, but just being like real people.
Yeah,
because for so long it was like, guys, I got into this college. Guys, I have a 4.0. Guys, I got this job. I got promoted, you know, and those were the only things we were sharing for so long. And now it's like, guys, I have a drinking problem or, you know, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It's where, like, I see all this stuff on social media all the time about like breaking generational trauma. But like, honestly, I think that that's like what a lot of us are trying to do, is like we see how emotionally unavailable the adults in our lives were when we were coming up and what that did to us. And like, we went through it, like, you know, Columbine, 9/11, you know, there's those lists of like, here's all the shit that millennials have lived through, right? And like, why are we upset? And like, but why are we also not fazed? And why are we also like, go ahead, do whatever you want. Like nothing phases us anymore.
But I think that's having an impact. I mean, you can see it directly in the conversation or the example that you just gave of your son, is that, you know, whatever you're putting into the world and that he's seeing and absorbing, he now wants to help others. So, I mean, you're already breaking it.
So in touch with his emotions.
Good.
And
I wasn't allowed to cry.
Sharing how he feels. And and like, you know, he's got a lot of emotions, so it can be hard. But, you know, I think it's important that we stop just trying to smush all of kids' emotions back into them.
Well, and I think he's experiencing a lot of things that a lot of people can understand. You know, his parents have now separated, and now he's seeing that they can be two separate humans and they can live different worlds and lives, and you're around to help him navigate that. And I think that's important. So I thank you for sharing your story and being quote unquote brave enough to share your story on your students' podcast. And, you know, just coming and having a genuine conversation. It's super helpful. If someone was like on the fence about, they had a similar story to yours, or they had something that they've never really told anyone, can you give any advice to someone that's kind of like itching, but still a little bit afraid about telling a story?
I would tell them, this is very specific niche advice, but I just thought of something I watched last night. So I've been binge watching The Great Pottery Throwdown. There is an episode in there where this woman, I'm not going to it's in season 5. Just watch episode 8, season 5, episode 8. There's a woman who said that she has had this story for so very long, and she finally puts it into her pottery that she makes, and like everyone is blown away. And like you just have to watch it to see like this is the catharsis that can happen when you finally let that shit go. So my advice would be to watch it to get the sense and understanding, but also just to say, let that shit go. Because the only person that you're doing damage to by holding on to it is you.
No, I agree. I mean, it's because it's kind of the same thing with podcasts, you know, like you hear other people going through an experience and you can relate to that. So like watching this pottery experience, by the way, I saw that you wanted to try throwing pottery. It's not very easy.
I've heard. That's why I haven't done it yet.
I did it in Colorado for a couple months and I made some really thick pots,
nice.
You know, but it's a good experience. It's something, but you will fail most likely many times before you do it. And I think that's a good experience in itself to learn, you know, eventually you can get it. So thank you for that advice. Thank you for letting shit go. Thank you for letting shit go on the podcast and on the Patreon feed. And I just appreciate you and the fact that our paths crossed a little over a year ago.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And those of you listening, you are on the Patreon tier. Thank you for supporting the show. And a new bonus episode will be out in about 3 weeks. So thanks again, and we'll see you later, Heidi. For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.